a world-class net promoter score is like 50, for example, or 60. That's
Yeah.
really high. So
Yeah.
it's a true testament of how many attractors you have. Wow,
Hmm.
that's amazing that you guys are rolling that out. That's
Yeah.
really forward thinking. And for those that are listening that are not aware of how it's calculated, a net promoter score isn't just a simple average. You have, I think it's 8 to 10 are promoters, and then under 5 or 3, it's detractors, and the detractors cancel out the promoters, and the neutrals don't get a score. So you can end up with a net promoter score of 0,
Yeah.
and it's just equal detractors to promoters or all neutral.
Yeah. And thank you, Tommy, because there's no way I would have explained that as well as you did. So good job.
Welcome to the KayaCast, the podcast for cannabis businesses looking to launch, grow, and scale their operations.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Tommy, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate you.
Before we start, you've been in this game for a while. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. Well, I've lived in Colorado for the last 20 years, have a wonderful family here, and have really loved living here. For that, lived a bunch of different places. I was a military kid growing up. Career wise, I had about a 20-year career in the tech industry. Started my career at Accenture, really large corporation. Had a couple other roles at large companies, but mostly startups. And then within that 20 years, I did spend 4 years on Wall Street as a sell side analyst covering technology companies. And then about 10 years ago, I had a successful exit from the last tech startup that I did and was trying to figure out what to do next. And somebody was introduced to me who needed help commercializing an innovative technology for cannabis oil extraction. And I jumped into the circus of the cannabis industry. And cannabis and psychedelics have been a part of my life for about 30 some odd years now. But the last 10 years have been especially fascinating, rewarding, frustrating, challenging, engaging. It's been a wild ride, and I can't say I've enjoyed every minute of it, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. So hard to regret the path that led me here.
I feel like that story is consistent across the board on every successful entrepreneur that goes into the cannabis industry. It could be so much better. It's always interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think the folks that have made it as long as I have, we all have similar stories to tell. I say often, we all have books in us waiting to be written.
So Spherex is quote unquote, like for me, an industry darling. You guys have done
Oh, thanks.
so much growth over the last little while. What have you attributed your growth to?
Yeah, I love that question. I came on board 3 years ago and inherited a really remarkable team. We've only hired a couple of junior level folks. Most of the core team was there before I started. So, really wonderful people. It's been a great place to work. We put a significant amount of attention on the details, and that goes from sourcing the biomass that we use to extract and produce our products, the way that we manage our production, and then all the way through to seeing those products sold to consumers. So every step of the way, we have a lot of discipline involved, a lot of attention to detail. We have a really strong and collaborative culture in our company. We work on the inevitable problems that always tend to show up in a really positive way, and we move through those things. And I think we really honor our commitments to one another and the company, and then beyond that to the suppliers, the cultivators that we work with, and as well as the retailers and the consumers. Every single one of those relationships is really, really important to us.
I was listening to an interview that you did last year, and you were talking about the different personas of a cannabis customer
Yeah.
and segmenting those personas
Hmm.
appropriately for your marketing engine. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the insights that you have and how SphereX's marketing has been so innovative?
Yeah, sure. I think Well, there's a few things to unpack there. What I think is really crucial about anybody who's trying to sell a product in the regulated cannabis industry is you have to really develop an authentic connection with the budtenders. They really are in control of that transaction. There are no other products sold today where you're at the point of sale. You don't go into 7-Eleven and say, hey, I'd like a Coke, and the person behind the counter isn't going to say, I really this you should have Pepsi. This just doesn't happen.
That's so true. That's so true.
And so we have to really be on that. We do a lot. We have a really tremendous field marketing team. They're out every single week in the stores talking to budtenders, loving them, swag, food, whatever it takes. And then we have a lot of budtender appreciation events throughout the year. We have a really epic party in October. And a lot of that is just continually building that connection with them. So that is what I would say is really at the core of the strategy. And then beyond that, we run a full stack marketing program that covers every step of the customer journey, very similar to what you see in traditional consumer product brands. And surprisingly, you don't really see it that often in the cannabis industry. I think we're one of the few companies that really operates a program that's at every stage of that customer journey and really designed to drive sell-through at the retail and product loyalty, brand loyalty with the shoppers. So I think that's what I would say in summary is sort of the secret, if you will, of the success.
I've heard, and I hear this all the time with other brands, is you have to have a strong road game. How is your road game, and how is your support to retailers? Because a strong connection with budtenders is evident in your strategy, does this dictate how fast you can grow geographically? And where did you start?
So there's a few things there as well. I think building on that relationship with the budtender, the overall relationship with the retailers, we look at merchandising programs with in-store assets. We also lean heavily into the types of marketing programs that retailers find effective for their customer base. Not every retailer does things exactly the same way, and we'll do private events with some retailers, and then we'll do programs like, for example, we do a sponsorship every year with Zed's Dead, the musical group, and we'll partner with a retailer and do things like we'll give away little poker chips that are effectively coupons at that event, and that drives the attendees to the event to go into the stores and buy the products from a specific retailer. So that's one example. We have many programs like that. We do billboard advertising, magazine advertising. We're piloting podcast advertising and doing a bunch of different programs to drive awareness and then customer intention to go in. And then as we think about going into other markets, in part of my experience, I spent 4 years helping to run Willie Nelson's cannabis company. I worked with some really tremendous people there. Elizabeth Hogan was our head of brand. Jeff Gillis was our head of marketing, and Nicole Kennebeck was our head of field marketing. So a lot of these programs were programs that I've adapted from the work we were doing there. I took Willie's Reserve from 2 states to 8 states. And what we got really good at was packaging up these programs and building process around them so that our partners in each market could operate them effectively as well. So as we go forward with Spherex and contemplate expanding, that's likely the same sort of playbook that we would use for the road games, making sure that the success that we've had in Colorado is very much repeatable in the other markets.
That's so true, because the number one mistake that I see a lot of retailers make is growing too fast and spreading themselves too thin before they have enough market concentration in a particular market.
Yeah. Well, I think you meant brands.
Yeah, brands. Brands.
Yeah, that's right. There's lots of brands that, and I won't name them I don't want to shame anybody, but there's lots of brands that are, well, we're in 15 states. Well, okay, what do you do in those 15 states to drive sell-through at the retail locations? And a lot of brands rely on pop-ups. Pop-ups don't work. They're an ineffective use of personnel and capital. You're going to have somebody in a store for a few hours. They might see a dozen people, and that's it. So it's fine if you're new to the store to build some awareness and engage with the retail staff there. But as a core component of a marketing plan, it's just not effective. And then so beyond that, what are you doing in those markets? And more often than not, the answer is, well, we have an Instagram account. We do some things there. And we have some signs in the store. So very limited engagement, but hey, we're in 15 states.
Yeah, which, ultimately at the end of the day, the retailer really, really, really is seeking brands that can support them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You have to be, going back to my original comment about our focus on those relationships. That's a partnership for us. And we invest in those partnerships very meaningfully.
You've mentioned customer journey, and I love talking about what other companies think about their customer journeys. We did a customer journey mapping last month, actually, the executive team, and just really dialing in what's the touch points in our customer's journey that we can dig into that can give them that wow moment, that we, as a business, we can have a connection with our customers. Yeah. How do you guys approach your customer journey?
Yeah, I love that question. I think, where sometimes you see cannabis companies fall down is you get folks who are leading the company that aren't a part of the cannabis community. And so those leaders are disconnected from the shoppers who they're trying to influence. With our team, we're very much engaged in the cannabis community. We have a number of events throughout the year in which we have the opportunity to engage with them. So they see us. We're out there. We're connecting with them. We're building tangible, authentic relationships with cannabis consumers. And I think that's the mindset we bring to all of the programs that we do. We're very experimental. We'll try things on a very, very small scale first and see how they go. Sometimes they don't go great, and we don't do them anymore. And the ones that do go well, we invest in and keep doing more of those. So, I think a lot of it's experimentation. Preferences change. There's trends. We do a lot of innovation in our products and our programming, and we get rid of the things that don't work and lean into the things that do.
I was going to ask you that. How does the marketing team and sales impact the overall product and customer experience?
Yeah, it's super collaborative. We have a weekly meeting every Tuesday morning. All of the department heads from production all the way through to sales and marketing sit around a table. We go over every aspect of our business. And then within that is new product development. So, for example, if we have we primarily make vapor cartridges. We do have a sleep gummy as well, but the vapor cartridges especially, we rotate in new flavors. So we'll talk about if there are, different cannabis varieties that are trendy or different flavors that we may be missing that need to fill out the portfolio. We have a very, very tight assortment. We have 60 SKUs. Our closest competitor in Colorado has more than double.
I honestly think that's why you guys are successful.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it really helps from an operating perspective, from a production perspective. We can run pretty lean. And so, we'll go through a multi-week process, several rounds of trying different variations of one flavor. Each week we'll try 5 different versions of that flavor and keep iterating until we land on the right formulation. For example, last year we launched, or I guess it was earlier this year, we launched a 4-gram all-in-one distillate product. And we spent nearly a year working with our hardware manufacturer, which is a company called Finished Goods. But we collaborated with them to develop that device from the ground up, because what we saw in the market with those large format devices was a lot of defective hardware. They were leaking. People were, would get down to the last gram and it would taste awful. Some of the defect rates were as high as 15 or 20%. And so our defect rate across all of our product lines is less than 0.5%, and we're really fastidious about that. The sleep gummy that we launched, we spent about a year developing that as well. And so sales and marketing brings the voice of the customer to the equation, and then we collaborate with our colleagues on the production side to make sure that we're not coming up with something that's difficult or costly to produce.
Sleep gummies. Sleep gummies is a completely different form than distillate.
Yeah.
What made you guys decide to go into that market?
Well, good question. I mean, we were starting to feel like, our growth trajectory, we look kind of a couple years out at these things, and we felt like, okay, we're within the next couple years, we're going to be pretty saturated with the vapor products. Gummies, very crowded market segment, but it translates. We produce a lot of distillate. We also have a rosin-based vapor cartridge product, and so we're comfortable working with those materials. And so we kind of looked at, well, maybe we do infused pre-rolls, maybe we do gummies. We landed on gummies. And as we started to do the market analysis, the number one edible product in every single state is a sleep gummy. If you look at the number one reason why people consume cannabis, it's to fall asleep. And so rather than joining a very crowded assortment with yet another average distillate gummy, we launched one SKU. And that is a rosin-based sleep gummy. And instead of, most sleep gummies use a lot of cannabinol, CBN. And oftentimes that's great at helping you fall asleep, but you'll wake up the next day feeling like you got run over by a truck. So we really reduced the amount of CBN relative to competitive formulations. And we added reishi mushrooms, which is a non-psychedelic functional mushroom that's very effective at helping people stay asleep. And so these have been really well received by shoppers. We have some big incumbents in the market with Wild and Wana, but we absolutely have a much better product than either of those brands have in the market. And so again, we are very disciplined in how we've rolled it out. We've been steadily expanding. The product with the reishi ingredient requires additional education. So we're trying to use a sports metaphor. We're trying not to outkick our coverage. We're only expanding to the extent that our field marketing team can keep up with educating the retail staff. And it's been going great. So now we've started to expand our advertising efforts around that product line. And hopefully by this time next year, we'll be in that dominant position, at least in Colorado, in the edible space. And then we might fill in with some other gummy SKUs that have, more general purpose, maybe a rosin product without the sleep effects, and maybe a distillate product after we've earned our position in the consumer's set of preferences and in the retailer's assortment.
That is admirable. And
Thank you.
I think that's a testament to why you guys are successful.
It's
because
the
often
secret right there.
it's the secret, and it's so simple, but so difficult
It's hard to execute. Yeah.
It's hard to execute operationally. I know I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs generally get we want to grow faster than we should, or we want to take on more than or dilute ourselves. You know what? I
have lots of entrepreneurial experience, and all these gray hairs come from a bunch of failures along the way. So I've learned those lessons the hard way, man. I feel you. It is the tendency. You get so excited and want to go full steam ahead, but I've learned to take a crawl, walk, run approach instead of the other way around.
I was talking to the executive team the other day, and we were talking about this very issue of as a business, it's really easy to understand the tangible cost of things. So, hey, we have a customer, they want X, Y, and Z. We're going to make X amount of dollars on it. Should we do it or not? Right? That's fair. That's a direct MRR or dollar value. But it's really hard for entrepreneurs to understand the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost of not going deep, the opportunity cost of spreading yourself too thin. Yeah. And oftentimes that's what unravels a business.
Yeah, it's super hard to learn those things without direct experience, though. Easy to talk about, but until you know what that looks like, what that feels like, it's hard to put it in practice.
It is. And it's always the crux for me is like, it's so much less expensive to learn from other people's mistakes. Without that emotional connection of loss, it's really hard to be disciplined.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and two, I think the other thing that creates a lot of problems if you're overcapitalized in a
Mhm.
startup, if you have too much cash on the balance sheet, you can avoid learning some mistakes by throwing money at it. You can avoid some real good lessons by spending money to solve a problem. So that's the other wrinkle. If a startup has too much capital, then they tend to not learn important lessons for that reason.
So you guys have done, your formula is brilliant. You make sure that you have enough field reps
Mm.
for to sustain your working, and this
Yeah.
proprietary. I won't dig into that, but and then you
No,
what?
it's not proprietary. I'm happy to talk about it all you want. I
Oh,
mean, it's
awesome.
like I said, there's nothing really secret about what we're doing. Many consumer product companies do this in many other markets. It's just unique to the cannabis industry.
That's so true. I mean, we do have a lot to learn from other industries, considering how young we are.
Sure. Yeah.
We do. So, and I
Yeah,
love,
liquor brands do what we do all day, every day, and have done
yeah.
for decades. There's nothing different about what we do than what the liquor brands do.
But I love how you got you roll out one gummy,
Mhm.
make sure that you have consumer acceptance,
Mhm.
you build product knowledge, and now it's so much easier to launch another variation
Yeah.
because you have
Well,
that already.
yeah, and I think that sits on top of the go-to-market program. We have demonstrated that we can drive sell-through meaningfully with the
Mhm.
retailers. We've demonstrated that we care about the quality of our products and that we're going to partner with them. And so they're receptive to the crazy ideas that we have. We're like, hey, we've got this sleep gummy. Can we try it in your stores and see how it goes? And the answer was yes. And, we started in a handful of stores and have grown from there.
What does the education of budtenders look like? How do you get budtenders excited about the product?
Oh man, I love that. It kind of depends on the chain or the retailer. Some of them have very formalized programs where they have regular education. They have a way that they like it rolled out. On the other end of that spectrum is, okay, come in this day and drag a couple of people back into the break room and talk to them about it. So it really kind of that whole range. So we have assets, we have training materials, we have PowerPoint Google Slides that we present that have the information that we think is important for the bud tenders. We really focus on the differentiators. Why this instead of that? And really try to plant those as the key sound bites. So we try to make that real crisp. And then, we'll do fun things like there'll be a quiz, like just standard education stuff. There'll be a quiz to test that they were paying attention, and we'll bring swag to give away for people that raise their hands and answer the questions. So you're pretty straightforward in that regard. And then for the company, the retailers that have more formalized education programs, they can take our assets and do the training on their own if they need to do it that way. And usually what we find is we have to make a couple of passes because of shift schedules. Not everybody is going to be there, or some people might be at the register when we're there to train the staff. So we need to go back again and get the rest of the people that we didn't get the first time around. So we pay a lot of attention to that,
Yeah, I was
especially
gonna
with
say,
this product. This product needs a lot of extra love. So
yeah.
we've been pretty intentional about that with
Do
this
you
product.
guys get the data of which budtenders are your top performing stars?
We have we've used programs like, what is it? I'm embarrassed, I can't remember. Sparkplug. So we've used programs like that in the past. We're not currently doing it at the moment. For a while, it was kind of a hot thing to do, to have incentives to incentivize budtenders on selling more of the product. And we did that earlier in our growth trajectory. We've built so much authentic loyalty with the budtenders now that we don't necessarily invest in that. What we are starting to do is look at Net Promoter Score. And so that will be a new effort for us as we go into 2026. We've been doing some internal work on that. We'll pilot it, and then we'll start to do that more broadly.
Oh, with the Budtenders themselves.
With the Budtenders, yeah, we'll have our field staff will go in and do you know how Net Promoter Score
Yeah,
works? So for the
yeah.
sake of maybe some listeners that don't, it's basically one simple question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our products to your customers? And so we'll ask the Budtenders that and we'll see how we do. And then we have lots of ways that we can use that data. For example, we might do that in a new account and then go back 3 months later after they've been engaged with our field marketing staff, with training, with swag, with the food drops and things like that. And then we'll ask again and see, compare the difference. And that's a way for us to measure the effectiveness of those programs. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Again, not exactly novel, been used for decades, but I think maybe somewhat unique in the cannabis industry.
That is something that we talk about so much. I have a background in the restaurant space where we serve two brands, restaurants and cannabis brands. And there's a lot of parallels to a restaurant owner that owns multi-unit
Sure.
operation to a retailer. And we're always trying to find what has worked in the restaurant industry, the oldest industry in the world, and migrate over these best practices to cannabis because cannabis is so new and some things are very novel.
Yeah, absolutely.
What
Yeah,
what else have you? And let's talk about the product a little bit. What
sure.
does set you guys apart? And as a bud tender, why should I gravitate towards Spherex?
Yeah, well, with vapor cartridges, man, that is hard.
It's a difficult. I mean, this is
Yeah,
saturated, right?
it is really well. It's saturated, but it tends to be very commoditized.
Mhm.
You know, if you get two vapor cartridges from two different brands, if they're both doing a good job of producing a quality product, it's going to be hard to distinguish between the two of them. So it's real hard with it with vapor cartridges. In less so maybe with flower. There's very distinctive differences between flower quality and different grades and that sort of thing. But with vapor cartridges, a lot of similarities. So, you know, number one has to be high quality. We are constantly, like I said, introducing new flavors. We're very rigorous in finalizing the flavor formulations of what we do. We want that to be a very enjoyable experience for the consumer. And then you have to cover a range of taste profiles as well. So that is very intentional. A lot of work goes into that. Number two is the quality of the hardware. It cannot leak. It cannot fail. You cannot have malfunctioning hardware that produces a off-putting taste in the product. So that's something that we have also worked with to we've used a range of different hardware vendors over the years, and we're very happy with the partnership that we have with Finished Goods because they put as much attention into that quality as we need them to. And so you'd be surprised. Those two things right there will set you at a different level than a lot of the people that we compete with, a lot of the other companies that we compete with. And then from there, the third piece of that is like I said earlier, winning the hearts of those bud tenders, because ultimately someone comes in and says, I want a vapor cartridge. If they don't already have, even if they do already have a brand in mind, that bud tender at the end of the day is going to have so much influence on the final selection. And we will always want the answer to be our brands.
That is so true. And I've never really thought about that until you mentioned it earlier that there's not a lot of retail experiences that relationship between the bud tender and the consumer
Yeah.
is present.
Here are the ones I know: wine,
Yeah.
coffee specialty, like in a coffee specialty, coffee or tea,
Hmm.
and your doctor's office. That's why there's legions of pharmaceutical representatives bringing cookies and cakes and treats to doctors' offices all over the country. If you have other ones, I'm always looking for new ideas, but those are the ones that I
It's
think
true.
are I can't. You know, people don't buy eggs, soda, those
Yeah.
things. You know, those aren't affected by the retailer.
Especially for goods that are, I would say, transactional or at lower price point,
Yeah.
these are really consultants that are consulting on a consumer
Sure.
on something that's not really that expensive.
Yeah. And it gave me shift over time, right? It's a relatively young industry, and the 80-20 rule applies. 20% of the shoppers are buying 80% of the products. Those core 20% of the shoppers, they come in with a preference in mind, and they kind of split evenly, especially with flower. You'll find half of that 20% cohort, half of them are going to buy the same thing every time. And half of them are going to say, well, what's new and different? And that comes down to their personality, right? Outside of that core 20%, a lot of shoppers that are coming into the store are really, they may have had cannabis experience years ago, or they may not be frequent shoppers. And that's really where the Budtender has the most impact.
What if you found that?
And sorry, so just to finish that thought. So as more of the population becomes educated and understands the products that are available, perhaps the Budtender may have less influence, but that's not the situation that we have today.
I look at some retailers have hundreds. I mean, most of them have hundreds, but we're talking about 400 or 500 SKUs in the back.
Yeah.
And as a Budtender, you have to. There's new shipments coming in weekly. You're probably new in your career. It's a very high turnover position, 55, 60%. How do you guys stay on top of a Budtender's mind when it comes to the category?
Well, the short answer is frequency. We're in those stores all the time. We have a specific cadence. So our top tier accounts that have the most volume, we visit those stores, I would say every 4 weeks, maybe less. And then for the next tier, then maybe less frequently, maybe every 6 to 8 weeks. And then for a third tier, maybe once a quarter. In Colorado, we have some remote locations up in the mountains that are pretty far away. So those ones are a bit harder to get to, but we're intentional about it. And they give us feedback that they really appreciate it, because not many other brands take the time and the effort to do that. But the assortment issue causes all kinds of problems, right? Most dispensaries are over assorted. Mm-hmm. Many dispensary buyers feel the need to fill those walls. And that creates all kinds of problems. And the biggest problem that it creates is limited sell-through. And from there, that has a domino effect. So if the retailer purchased those product on payment terms, they're expecting that all that product is going to sell through before the bill comes due to their supplier. If it doesn't sell through in a fast enough time frame, they're left not paying their bills on time, which is a massive issue that we have in this industry. In other industries, the retailer might be able to get a line of credit from a bank and then pay the supplier based on that debt. But in our industry, those types of banking facilities aren't available. So this over assortment is a massive problem. And it's the main reason why we have this huge accounts receivable problem in the industry, because retailers are just carrying way too many brands, way too many products.
It's huge. It's a huge, and it's paralyzing too. Yeah. It's so paralyzing.
The most effective retailers are churning their underperforming products all the time. They'll get rid of anything that's not selling through within their payment terms, and they do that regularly.
Mm-hmm. I've always wondered if a retailer can ever adopt the Costco model, not from a white label perspective, but just from hey, this category, these are the brands that we're going to carry, or the number of brands we're going to carry, and that's, we'll kick off a brand before we add a brand type of thing.
Yeah, in our state, Starbuds does that model. That's their method for sure, mm-hmm. and they've had a lot of success with it.
It's probably so much more easier for everybody involved.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
I want to pivot a little bit. I want to talk about your consulting side of things, because I'm so interested. When I was looking at the work that you've done, anti-gravity is a name that just pulled me. So it's funny. It's anti-gravity, but there was a gravitational pull for sure for me. What do you do? What does
Yes, I
that
mean
make
that
out of you?
started many many years ago. I've had done various consulting projects for companies over the years, going back to my time in tech. Usually go to market efforts, pricing, marketing strategy, sales strategy, those types of things. And then within the cannabis industry, I've consulted with some national brands like Old Pal, Bensk, Heisman, helping them with multi-state strategies, licensing strategies, pricing, go-to-market planning, and things like that. And then more recently, that has evolved into a private practice of personal development coaching and psychedelic facilitation. So less focus on the business consulting. My quote unquote day job at Spherex keeps me quite engaged. So I don't do a lot of business consulting these days, but mostly it's personal development coaching for individual clients and then psychedelic facilitation as well.
The executive coaching, do you stay in the cannabis lane or is just across all industries?
It's definitely not specific to cannabis, but I have coached many people in the cannabis industry. I just sort of I think that's my community. That's the closest network, and I don't do a lot of advertising or promotion around my coaching practice. I have about a half dozen clients, and then each of those clients I'll see every other week. So each week I'm really only working with a few clients, and then one will finish and then it seems like another one will show up, and it's been kind of like that. I've coached several professional musicians as well. So I think cannabis, the music industry, and tech probably that's probably the industries that of people I coach.
How prevalent is imposter syndrome?
Oh, it's rampant. Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, that's one of the hardest issues I've personally had to overcome. It's so hard. And
Myself included. And I was
yeah,
wondering, you're on the other side. You see a lot of different personalities come through.
yeah,
Is this something that takes a lot of space in your conversation?
imposter syndrome
Mm.
specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. It's sort of there. A lot of people come seeking purpose in their
Mm.
lives and in their career. They feel like, maybe they've gotten to a point where they're not sure what comes next for them. So there's a bit of that. And then for people that feel like they sort of have stalled out, you sort of get at what's the root cause of that sense. Why do you feel that way? Why have you found yourself in this place? And imposter syndrome can definitely be a big piece of that, right? And so it's this fundamental perspective that we are not worthy.
Hmm.
That's usually what is at the heart of imposter syndrome. Is some level a person considers themselves to be unworthy. And so in that type of work, we go back and unpack, well, where's that coming from?
Mm.
Where did that be? You see it. You hardly ever see it in Eastern cultures. You see it predominantly in the U.S. and in our culture. You don't see a lot of it in many cultures. That question never comes up. Of course, I'm worthy. I'm a soul. I exist. I have every
Mm.
right to be here and to take up space because I'm a human being. And so in our culture that somehow got lost. And so people find determined for whatever reason or another that they are unworthy.
Do you find that your psychedelic work helps with that connection of worthiness?
It can, it's not a panacea. And I have plenty of coaching clients who I do not engage in psychedelic facilitation. I have psychedelic facilitation clients that don't really do a full blown coaching program with me. I think the biggest benefit of the psychedelic work, and I primarily work with cannabis as a psychedelic medicine. I do work a bit with other psychedelics, but primarily it's cannabis. But I think really the key element there is it helps people to soften their egos. And
Mm.
their egos is primarily, in many ways, it's a defense mechanism. It is the identity, and identity as a construct it's imaginary, and it's transient. It's in no way permanent, and people find themselves in crisis often because their core identity is no longer what it once was, or the way that they thought of themselves is different. And so as much as that ego is a defender, a protector, a defense mechanism, the psychedelic experience soften that protection and enable us to really go, okay, well, what is behind that ego? What is really the issue that's at the heart of imposter syndrome, or this sense of unworthiness, or whatever is really going on there? And so that's really the benefit of working with psychedelics. In that case, there are many other applications for psychedelics, but within personal development, that's usually where the psychedelics come into play.
What I found with imposter syndrome for me, and how I dealt with that, was it just drove me to work harder, which probably isn't the healthiest thing. You know?
Tell me more, Tommy.
It just drove me to work harder to, hey, I have a lot to prove here.
Yeah.
I need to be better. I need to, feel that I'm capable, that I'm a capable leader. So I need to just work hard. Totally. Which in the short term, it's great because you do get a lot of results from a material perspective, but you can drive yourself because it just never stops.
A lot of anxiety, a lot of burnout. I mean, that's where I was in my life. And that's how I came to a meditation practice. I was
just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
You meditate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Every single day, usually 30 to 45 minutes every morning. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I began that practice, I had all kinds of stories in my head. Well, I'll lose my edge, was what a lot of people think. But what I found at that time was about 8 years ago. And what I found at that time was I didn't lose the edge. I lost the anxiety. And so I was actually able to take on more risk. I was less worried about failure as a result of the meditation.
Wow, that's fascinating. Have you, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of float tanks in Colorado.
I haven't yet, but I would love to try. I actually am privileged to have a hot tub in my backyard. So there's a form of meditation called Watsu, which is meditating while floating in water. And so I also do that almost every day. But no, I would love to do a sensory deprivation tank. I haven't yet, but they are around in Colorado for sure.
That is one way of having a psychedelic experience while meditating. You have to try it.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate you reminding me.
It's funny because I was talking to people that meditate you guys have a different frequency, and you probably get that a lot, right? There's just stillness, and I can't really describe it. It's a stillness that's anchored on something.
Being grounded.
Yeah, being grounded.
And my personality, I would say, is different than it used to be. My wife will tell me that I'm much more charming. But yeah, I definitely have noticed that shift. People who are close to me have noticed that shift too.
Before I let you go, if I was a entrepreneur, obviously in the cannabis industry, and I think I love what I do. I love the podcast. It's given me such a huge vehicle to talk to other entrepreneurs and other high-performing individuals. Because what I found was, for me personally, I had the aha moment that in business, you're in the business of infinite problem solving. And I used to think that, hey, Tommy, if I solved this big problem, the world would be so much better. And then you solve a problem, and then next you know it, another bigger problem comes on. And the problem just gets bigger, and bigger. Until I realized that, okay, this is the business that I'm in. I'm in the business of infinite problem solving, and it's my job to decide which problems to solve and to be okay with not solving these other problems. And the more that I got comfortable with not solving every single problem, I saw that things moved a lot faster.
Fascinating. What a beautiful observation.
Yeah. And do you, on your, I guess in a roundabout way, what are some of the common things that you've discovered talking to other entrepreneurs in in coaching them through the problems that they go through on a daily basis? What's very common that an entrepreneur goes through?
Well, it's such a range. I'm not sure that there's any one pattern. I mean, we touched on imposter syndrome. That one is absolutely one that shows up a lot. A lot of it also is around identity, and that's also attached to imposter syndrome. Like, what is my identity? An entrepreneur, that's an identity. A CEO is an identity. A father, a daughter, a spouse, those are all identities, but they're not really who we are. Mm. And so, a mother whose core identity is based on raising their children and caring for their children. What is their identity when those children leave the house? That's a really difficult time for many parents, for example, or a failure of a business. I'm a CEO. I'm an entrepreneur. My business has failed. What am I now?
That's so true. It's probably really prevalent for athletes.
Oh, yeah.
That are at the tail end of their careers.
It's prevalent for every single person in our society. Our society, especially with the proliferation of social media. Who am I on Instagram? How many likes did I get? All of this is imaginary, right? It's not really who we are. It's not who we are at a soul level in our hearts. We're just beings here to learn in this existence. That's all we are. And anything beyond that is an imaginary construct, and it's brittle. And when it gets taken away from us against our will, it can be terribly dysregulating. And that's what I think a lot of people in our country struggle with.
Mm-hmm. What are some, and I think I know the answer to this, but what are some exercises that somebody can do to get more connected with their being?
Yeah, for me, I'm a huge proponent of meditation, and really from there, the purpose, the intention, and there's many different forms of meditation. So let me be more specific, and what I mean is mindfulness meditation, not necessarily repeating a mantra, but just noticing the fact that you're having thoughts. You focus on your breathing. When thoughts arise, you notice that you're having thoughts. Return your attention to your breathing. And that builds the ability to notice your thoughts. And then once you have gained the ability to notice your thoughts, you may find that some of those thoughts are higher quality than others. Some of them may be very self-critical. Some of them may be very distracting. And so once you develop the capacity to notice those thoughts, oftentimes what I'll invite people to do is start journaling. When do you notice those thoughts? What are the situations that are giving those thoughts to you? Who are you around? What time of day? Just really start to develop a deeper understanding. And so once you can really develop that capacity to become aware of those thoughts, then you can navigate difficult situations in a much more grounded way. That you'll find them less overwhelming. You can really then, hey, if you have a dysregulating thought, then you can return to that process of finding your breath, centering, grounding, stabilizing, and then navigating your experience in a more equanimous way.
Do you find that practicing meditation has gotten you to not necessarily be associated with your thoughts, but observe, hey, this thought that I'm having is, well, one, what is the root of this? So that you can be a little bit more in control of why you're thinking a certain way, but disassociate yourself from thoughts that maybe are not serving you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt.
Gotcha. That's I can also see that in the world of the I feel like we live in a world where everybody has a slot machine. And it's just constant dopamine all day on your phone.
Yeah.
And has meditation given you the ability to just focus for longer periods of time?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I mostly have cured that by mindfulness. I also don't get involved with social media anymore. I follow my kids and a couple of people on Instagram. I don't post on Instagram or Facebook. I do post on LinkedIn and try not to read the feed too much on LinkedIn. So really limit my consumption of social media. In the mornings when I start my day, I don't look at my phone for the first several hours. I used to have a habit of, what did I miss? And looking at that immediately. When I'm in, like let's say a coffee shop, a lot of us have the tendency to kind of just get engaged in the phone at the coffee shop. I try to be disciplined and just notice the coffee shop. Oh, that's a cool painting. What do I notice about that painting? There's some people over there. Oh, look at what they're wearing. Just try to be present more.
Yeah. What has really helped me and was being bored. And I don't know if that's a correlation with meditation, but it's really helped me not just with overall life in general.
Yeah.
And
being comfortable with stillness.
Just being bored. I guess that's the same thing, but before I used to always have
boredom's discomfort, right? Boredom's a negative experience. Because you're feeling I'm not engaged, I'm not entertained, I'm not doing something.
But that has really helped me in finding excitement on things that would normally bore me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like resetting my baseline of what's exciting.
Yeah, during the pandemic, I took a really interesting online class called it was a lot of people did, like millions of people did this thing. It was the Science of Well-Being, I think it was called. And it looked at all these different ways that are mind fucks, like how does our mind trick us into things and how can we overcome that? And one of the really great tricks that I've tried to adopt that I really appreciate was this idea of savoring. So when you're in an experience, deepening that experience by going, wow, that sunset, that orange is such a unique shade of orange. I don't know if I've ever seen that shade of orange before. Or when the leaves are changing color, noticing that, oh, last week they weren't this color. This week they're just a little bit deeper. So eating food, wow, I really noticed the different flavors that are coming through, the different seasonings that are coming, like really deepening your exploration. Man, that brings so much joy. It really heightens the positive aspects of those experiences in a much more meaningful way.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I gotta incorporate that in. That reminded me a lot about my last time going through a float tank. It was a while ago. And then coming out of that experience and just walking down the street and noticing the leaves and the sun hitting the leaves. And
yeah,
that's because my senses were just deprived for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But to incorporate that in every day. Thank you so much. I'm gonna take that with me. Ryan, before I let you go, how can our listeners find you?
Oh, goodness. Like I said, I'm most active on LinkedIn. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. My coaching website is antigravgrp.com. So those are two easy ways to find me.
Thank you so much for joining me today. You dropped gems. Thank you.
My pleasure, Tommy. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the KayaCast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.